Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the cafe, casting a glow on Sophia Taylor's profile. She wore a champagne-colored long dress, her makeup exquisite, her smile gentle yet distant. Sitting opposite her was Leo Wright, dressed in a suit, his expression flamboyant. The way he looked at her was like admiring a prized possession, intense and greedy. When I pushed the door open, she didn't even glance up. I stood by their table, my eyes falling on the latte in front of her. 2 sugars, less foam. Still remember how you like it. Sophia Taylor finally looked up at me, her eyes without a trace of emotion, as if I were just a stranger. Ethan Johnson. She called out my name, but it sounded like she was trying to confirm a vague word. Who are you? I smiled, placed a folder on the table, and pulled out the divorce agreement. Wasn't today the day we agreed to sign? She didn't respond, but Leo Wright curled his lips disdainfully. Brother Ethan, I really admire you. Your wife doesn't even remember you, and you're still so shameless. I ignored him and looked at her. Her slender fingers took the document, glanced through it, and without hesitation picked up the pen, signing her name with a casual stroke. No hesitation, no emotion, as if this marriage was never worth mentioning. Don't blame me, she said softly, her voice tinged with regret, but no apology. I really don't remember you. I nodded. Yes, you're right. She pushed the agreement over, stood up, and was about to leave. Wait, I called out to her. She looked back at me, her brows and eyes gentle yet hollow. Is there something else? My gaze fell on her face, and I slowly spoke. Actually, you never lost your memory. As the words fell, the air seemed to freeze for a moment. She was stunned for a second, then let out a light laugh. What do you mean? Leo Wright immediately stood protectively by her side, his tone icy. Ethan Johnson, are you out of your mind? Sophia has already had a brain scan, and the doctor said she has selective memory loss. How dare you question the hospital? The doctor you mentioned, is his last name Stone, and does he work at the private clinic your family invested in? I asked, my gaze cold. Sophia Taylor's expression flickered slightly, but she quickly regained her composure, stopped joking. I said no more, put the agreement away, and turned to leave. As I walked out of the cafe, her calm voice when signing still echoed in my ears. I really don't remember you. My friend Marcus Lynn called and asked me, did you really sign it? I said, I did. Are you crazy? He shouted on the other end. She was just momentarily confused. When she regains her memory, she'll realize how good you were to her. Then she'll be crying, begging you to come back. She didn't lose her memory. I interrupted him, my tone as calm as if I were talking about the weather. How are you so sure? When she holds a coffee cup with her left hand, she still uses her thumb and middle finger to hold the lid, afraid of burning her mouth. That's what I taught her. I looked into the distance. She remembers. There was silence on the other end of the phone. She remembers all my habits, but just pretends to have forgotten me. I chuckled softly. Marcus Lynn, I've seen through it. She hasn't changed at all. She's always been like this. I hung up the phone and walked toward the company. Claire Zhang had long been waiting for me at the door, dressed in a sleek black dress. Seeing me arrive, she whispered, did she sign? I nodded. She didn't say much, just handed me a document. This is the project list for the new round of financing for Taylor Group. They're waiting for investment from Leo Wright's side, but the Wright family's finances are barely holding up. Good. I opened the document. Then we'll start from here. Claire Zhang pressed her lips together. I always felt you were too low-key in front of her before. Low-key. I sneered. That was when I considered her my wife. And now, I closed the file. Now, I only see her as a debt that must be collected. The sunlight slanted down as I stood in front of the office building, watching the endless flow of people. I am no longer the Ethan Johnson who endured repeatedly. She can pretend to have amnesia, then I will pretend to have loved. From the moment she signed, this marriage was completely over for me. But my counterattack has only just begun. On the 7th day after the divorce, a photo from the engagement party flooded my social media feed. In the photo, Sophia Taylor was nestled in Leo Wright's arms, smiling sweetly and coquettishly. He held a glass of champagne, his suit crisp, looking like a victorious king. The caption was bland yet piercing. Thank fate for bringing us back together. The comments below were full of blessings, but no one mentioned me. It was as if she had never been married, as if I had never been a part of her life. I didn't like her comment, just turned off my phone and signed off on the last file. Claire Zhang stood in front of my desk, handing over a new financial list. The projects we invested in have completed the preliminary acquisitions. One of them is a former partner of Taylor Group. I nodded. Good. Speed up the process. She hesitated for a moment and asked, "Are you really not going to explain to her?" I looked up, my tone indifferent. Explain what? She is now telling the outside world that you were clingy and persistent, and that your bad temper after marriage drove her to a mental breakdown. Claire Zhang frowned. Some people believed it, and are even insulting you online. Let her act however she wants. I sneered. Anyway, this time I won't steal the spotlight. Claire Zhang said nothing more, just nodded lightly. Understood. Before she turned around, I suddenly spoke up. Help me change my phone number. She was slightly stunned. Are you sure? Sure. I leaned back in the chair, squinting. She doesn't remember me anymore, right? Then don't give her the chance to get to know me again. 3 days after the divorce, Sophia Taylor sent someone to deliver an assistant arranged by her company, saying they were worried I wouldn't adapt to life. I had someone send them back the way they came. On the 5th day, her assistant blocked me downstairs at my office building and said tactfully, "Miss Taylor asked me to tell you that Mr. Wright has been too busy lately to spend time with her, and she feels a bit lonely." I lit a cigarette, took a drag, and said calmly, "Tell her to finish playing the amnesia role and not to miss any lines." The assistant was stunned. She really doesn't remember you? Then how does she still know which company I work for? Which floor? I retorted, my eyes cold. Such a good memory. On the 10th day, I took the initiative to revoke the property allocation rights and stock benefits she had arranged for me, returning everything. That was the year we got married. She had voluntarily put the assets under my name, and now I was leaving not a single share. When Marcus Lynn found out, he nearly lost his mind. Are you out of your mind? Half of the Taylor family's cash flow is supported by those few pieces of land you have. What are you trying to do by returning it all? Be a saint. I said, I'm the kind of person who hates getting involved with liars the most. 2 weeks later, my change of face finally caught the attention of Sophia Taylor herself. She was waiting for me downstairs at my company, holding an umbrella and wearing a beige trench coat. I walked over, and she smiled as she said, "Can we have a word?" I stopped in my tracks and looked at her for 3 seconds. "Who are you?" She was taken aback. I kept walking, Claire Zhang right behind me, holding the umbrella over my head to block her view. Her voice came from behind, filled with confusion and a hint of panic. "Didn't you love me very much?" I didn't look back, only softly replied to her in my heart. "Yes, loving you to the point of crushing my dignity to dust. But unfortunately, I don't love you anymore." At night, Claire Zhang stood at the office door and whispered, "She's here again, sitting downstairs for 2 hours." The pen in my hand paused for a few seconds. "Let her sit." I spat out the 3 words coldly. "Understood." I sat back in the chair, looking out at the brightly lit city, but countless scenes flashed through my mind. She held a hot water bottle late at night, saying her back hurt, and I massaged her for half an hour. When she was sick, she curled up on the sofa, refusing to take medicine. I coaxed her for 3 hours before she drank half a bowl of porridge. On her birthday, she said she didn't like big gatherings, so I personally cooked a table full of her favorite dishes. But all of this couldn't compare to the forged amnesia certificate she presented. Her amnesia was just an excuse to get rid of me, and my ruthlessness is only just beginning. I will play this game with her to the very end. She pretends to have amnesia, so I will pretend to have loved her. Anyway, starting today, I won't soften my heart anymore, nor will I look back. She acts, I expose. She dances, I watch. It's my turn to perform. In the first month after the divorce, I became a hot commodity. When Sophia Taylor divorced, and the news of her engagement to Leo Wright broke out, the entire upper-class circle assumed I had completely become the jilted, resentful ex. But no one expected that while she was still lost in the daydream of reclaiming her first love, the letter of intent for acquisition in my hand had already gripped the lifeline of her family business. Taylor Group's most important financial partner, San Francisco Industries, officially announced its withdrawal, and the one taking over was my newly established Prosperity Investments holding company. They guessed the scheme, but never expected it was me who made the move. On the day of signing the contract, the chairman of San Francisco Industries smiled and asked me, "Why is the son-in-law of the Taylor family so harsh to his own father-in-law?" I smiled and flicked the cigarette, but lightly. "He's my ex-father-in-law now." "You kid. Have you completely fallen out?" "Not fallen out, just settling accounts. In 3 months, my net worth doubled. In the eyes of outsiders, Prosperity Investments emerged suddenly with strong momentum. But no one knew that this company was my contingency plan for the divorce from the very beginning. Before, I held back for the sake of marital ties. Now that I've completely let go, no one can expect to stay secure. Claire Zhang reported, "There is a financial discrepancy in Golden Harvest Ventures under Leo Wright's name. The media is investigating, and he has embezzled funds from a joint project to cover expenses for Taylor Group." I raised an eyebrow. "Is he desperate?" "Desperate," she smiled. "Neither side can be saved now, and they've already started selling shares to stop the bleeding." I nodded. "Buy all of it." I stared at the numbers on the financial report and said coldly, "If he's willing to bet his life, why should I hold back?" A week later, I received an invitation. The official engagement party of Sophia Taylor and Leo Wright, to be held at the Malibu Private Club. The inviter is signed as the chairman of Taylor Group, Sophia Taylor's father. I had no intention of going until I saw a name on the guest list, none other than the wife of the Lieutenant Governor of California. This is a show of political resources with an obvious intention. I immediately instructed, "Call Marcus Lin and have him make the connection to bring the Lieutenant Governor's son to my event tomorrow night." Claire Zhang looked up. "Are you also hosting a party?" I nodded, a smirk on my lips. The Taylor family's engagement banquet was too boring. I invited them to see what a real comeback looks like. That night, Malibu was dazzlingly magnificent. Leo Wright, dressed in a white suit, wore a triumphant smile as he held Sophia Taylor and walked to the center of the stage. The media, celebrities, and the powerful gathered in droves. She smiled gently, but her eyes kept wandering through the crowd, as if waiting for someone. Even halfway through the banquet, I still hadn't appeared. She finally couldn't hold back, and when she went to the restroom, she opened her phone and sent me a message. "Are you really not coming? This might be the last time we see each other." I glanced over but didn't respond. Claire Zhang reminded me from the side. "The banquet has started." I nodded, stood up, and walked into the Prosperity Investments founding cocktail party. Guests took their seats, and under the spotlight, I raised my champagne glass. "Thank you all for coming tonight." The guests present applauded one after another. And at this moment, I announced the latest acquisition on the big screen. Prosperity Investments officially acquired 60% of Golden Harvest Ventures, becoming the largest shareholder. The whole audience was in an uproar. What does this mean? It means that I, Ethan Johnson, have become the actual boss of Leo Wright. The wife of the Lieutenant Governor of California applauded on the spot. "Mr. Ethan, that was a brilliant move. Young people have guts." I smiled. Having the opportunity to work is thanks to everyone's kindness. The banquet ended, and I sat in the private room when I received a call from Sophia Taylor. Her voice was unsteady. Why did you do this?" I leaned back on the sofa, casually saying, "Are you talking about the acquisition of Golden Harvest? You know very well that's Leo's company." "Yeah." I took a sip of wine and said slowly, "Didn't you say you forgot who I am?" Since you don't remember me, then don't interfere in the business competition between me and a stranger." She was silent for a long time, then said softly, "You've changed. After the divorce." I smiled faintly. I heard that men who have divorced are the most charming. Silence on the other end of the phone. Before hanging up, I added, "Thank you for getting divorced." That night, I became the rising star of capital trending on social media. And Leo Wright became the industry's joke of losing to the ex-husband despite relying on his wife's support. Sophia Taylor looked at the wine glass in her hand, her face pale. I didn't attend her engagement party, but on the same day, I gave a gift heavier than a diamond ring in another way. She finally began to regret it. Unfortunately, my game had just begun. 3 days after Leo Wright's engagement party, Sophia Taylor finally couldn't hold back. She wore a white dress and waited downstairs at my company for a full 2 hours. Claire Zhang walked into the office, expressionless, and said, "She's here again." I didn't look up. Let her keep waiting. She said she just wants to talk, and will leave after that. I closed the file in my hand and finally stood up. The elevator doors opened, and I stood in front of her. Sophia Taylor saw me and showed a deliberately gentle smile. "You finally agreed to see me." I looked at her. "Didn't you say you didn't remember me?" She was at a loss for words, paused for a few seconds, then said, "It seems like some fragments of memory have come back recently. I want to talk to you." I didn't respond to her words and turned to go up to the rooftop lounge. She followed up. "You've changed a lot recently." She sat down on the sofa and picked up her tea. Before, whenever you saw me, you were always silent. Now, it's completely different. I smiled. I was the one pretending before, now it's you. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? Sophia Taylor, are you an actress or a psychologist? Selective amnesia sounds like a real illness. Her expression changed instantly. Are you doubting me? I leaned against the sofa, my tone calm but sharp. If I didn't doubt you, how would I have found out that you and Leo Wright were in frequent contact 6 months before the divorce, and that on the morning of your car accident, you were even having breakfast with him? Her body stiffened, fingers gripping the teacup tightly. Aren't you pretending to have amnesia? Why aren't you continuing the act? My tone darkened, my gaze piercing through her disguise. I'm not. She forced the words out, but her voice began to falter. I sneered coldly. You played it well, making everyone believe you're the poor victim. But let me tell you, the real victim is the one who never questioned anything and endured everything for you. The air was so quiet it almost solidified. She bit her lip, trying to soften her tone. But didn't you love me very much before? You said that as long as I turned back, you would always be there. I chuckled lightly, my gaze cold and clear. Back then, I was blind. The next day, a video went viral on social media. Sophia Taylor waited for me downstairs at my company, handing over a homemade lunchbox, only to be coldly turned away by Claire Zhang, making the scene extremely awkward. Claire Zhang's line, "You've lost your memory, but you still remember he doesn't like cilantro," immediately made her face swell up. That video surpassed 1 million views, with the comments all flooded with, "Sophia Taylor, did you recover your memory or just mess up? What do you mean overacting? The amnesia makes no sense." Even worse, Leo Wright liked the comment, right there under the hot comments that day. On the 5th day, she suddenly asked to meet me. This time, the location changed to her studio. The lighting was dim. She wore a plain shirt, no longer wearing makeup, and looked somewhat tired. "Do you have to be so ruthless?" She sat across from me, her tone low. "Don't you have any feelings left for the past?" I looked into her eyes. "Do you really not understand? Or are you just pretending to be confused?" "I have no choice." Her voice was a bit choked. "My dad's company needs the support of the Wright family. If I don't cooperate, they're finished." I interrupted her. "So you sacrifice the marriage, sacrifice me? I never meant to hurt you, but every step you take tramples on my heart." I stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her. "From the moment you decided to collude with Leo Wright to forge the diagnosis, it was over between us." Her eyes reddened, and she grabbed my arm. "Weren't like this before." I shook her off sharply. "Yes, I was foolish before." She was stunned. I walked toward the door, and just before leaving, I looked back at her and said slowly, "You acted for 3 years, and I watched for 3 years. Now, it's my turn to take the stage." That same night, at the Taylor Group's senior management meeting, 3 directors announced their withdrawal of shares on the spot, citing a lack of confidence in the company's financial arrangements. All 3 of them were recruited by me behind the scenes. "Mr. Taylor lost his temper and smashed the teacup. Are you the one causing trouble behind the scenes?" I just replied, "This is the daughter your family raised. Blaming me is useless." Leo Wright also got anxious beside him. "Mr. Taylor, if this continues, the company will really be finished." Sophia Taylor sat in the corner, her face pale, unable to utter a single word. She finally realized that the man she forgot was no longer her safe haven, but the center of this storm. And she was not yet qualified to call a stop. On Friday morning, Leo Wright held a press conference with the theme, Rumor Dispelling and Clarification. They finally couldn't sit still anymore. The invitation to this press conference was also sent to me. On the surface, it was a public communication, but in reality, they wanted to pull back around in front of the public. Claire Zhang stood in front of my desk, her tone calm. "Are you going?" "Of course I'm going." I curled my lips into a cold smile. Aren't they fond of acting? Then I'll give them a surprise they didn't rehearse for. The conference hall was brightly lit, with the media's long lenses and cameras set up. Sophia Taylor and Leo Wright stood shoulder to shoulder on the stage. "The recent rumors about Miss Taylor and me are completely unfounded," Leo Wright said solemnly. "We have always been in a proper relationship. Before she regained her memory, we were just friends. Still playing the amnesia card. What nerve." I sat in the 3rd row, quietly listening to their whole defense speech. When the host said, "Now we open the Q&A session," I raised my hand and stood up. "I am Ethan Johnson, chairman of Prosperity Investments. I have a few questions I'd like Miss Taylor to answer publicly. The audience erupted in a commotion, and all the cameras focused on me. Sophia Taylor's expression clearly changed, but she quickly forced a smile. Of course, Mr. Ethan. I walked onto the stage, looking her straight in the eyes. First, you say you have amnesia and can't remember our 3 years of marriage. Then tell me, when you sent your assistant to deliver lunch to me last week, how did you manage to avoid all my dietary restrictions? Cilantro, garlic sprouts, fatty beef, foie gras. None of them were included. Her expression stiffened, and her eyes darted around. Whispers began to spread among the audience. I continued. Second, you were immediately sent to Mayo Private Hospital in Chicago after the car accident. That hospital is a private medical center invested and controlled by your mother before she passed away. Was the memory impairment diagnosis you mentioned issued by someone from your own side? Her lips turned pale. She wanted to speak, but my voice silenced her. Third, who did you contact first after losing your memory? I threw out a printed copy. This is the call record between you and Leo right on the day of the accident. At 7:23 a.m., you actively dialed his number, and the call lasted 17 minutes. Slap! The printed document fell onto the desk, solid evidence. The entire room was so quiet that even the mechanical whirring of the camera could be heard clearly. Sophia Taylor's lips trembled. The color drained from her face. I'm not. I was just very confused at the time. I don't remember. You don't remember me, but you remember looking for him. I interrupted her, my tone completely cold now. Stop pretending, Sophia Taylor. The audience is already awake. Leo Wright wanted to step forward and block him. Ethan Johnson, you're spreading rumors. I raised my hand to stop him, my voice low but icy to the extreme. Are you the person involved? Or is she the scriptwriter? I stared into his eyes, speaking word by word. You misappropriated project funds from Golden Harvest Ventures to cover Taylor Group's debts. Who approved that? You used Taylor Group's private accounts as collateral, borrowing at high interest to help her father with cash flow, and now the Financial Regulatory Authority is watching. Isn't that right? Leo Wright's face turned pale and then flushed, veins bulging at his temples. In front of the entire media, I threw out my final trump card. Leo Wright, Golden Harvest Ventures is now controlled by me. You are currently an executive director under my name, and I can send you to the audit room at any time for an overnight account investigation. Sophia Taylor suddenly turned to look at him. You sold the shares to him? I was just cashing out temporarily. She finally couldn't hold it in anymore, staggering back a step, as if she had finally seen the true face of this white moonlight beside her. She wanted to rely on Leo Wright to turn things around, but she didn't expect that Leo Wright had already sold her out completely. She turned to me, her eyes full of panic and pleading. Ethan, I didn't mean to deceive you. I was forced, really. I looked at her, my gaze icy cold. I used to believe you because I was stupid. Now, whatever you say, I just think you're acting. She bit her lip, her voice trembling. You don't have any feelings left at all? I chuckled softly, cold to the bone. Your amnesia is fake. My heartlessness is real. As soon as I finished speaking, I turned and walked away, causing an uproar among the reporters. I didn't look back. She covered her mouth and cried on stage, her makeup completely ruined, looking utterly disheveled. My hart was aus tom aus still water. On the way back to the company, Marcus Lynn called me. I just watched the live stream. Your move today was incredible. I didn't respond. Leo Wright's legal team is preparing to protect themselves, and I'm going to make sure none of them get away. Sophia Taylor must be crazy now, right? I was silent for a few seconds, then said coldly, she regrets it now. Too bad. I stopped caring about her regrets a long time ago. In the evening, Claire Zhang pushed the door open and handed me a report. Mr. Taylor has just been kicked out of his position on the board. The Taylor family has completely lost power. I took the document and flipped through a few pages, saying calmly, good. She glanced at me. You don't even have a heartbeat fluctuation now. I closed the file, my gaze calm. I'm not becoming cold. I've just finally woken up. Front page headline of the California Financial Daily. Shocking, Prosperity Investments holds Golden Harvest Ventures. Taylor Group suffers continuous losses. The fall of the elite is imminent. The article was published less than 10 minutes ago, and Taylor Group's stock price plummeted by 8.2%. At noon, Mr. Taylor stormed into the company conference room with his lawyer, questioning all the executives. Who leaked the merger plan? Who betrayed me? No one spoke. I sat down across from them, gently looked up, and snapped my fingers. The next second, the projection screen lit up, and a recording of a meeting began to play. Old Taylor is getting on in years, and his mind isn't as quick anymore. Nowadays, the capital market values speed. You need to choose someone who can get things done. Speaker, Leo Wright. Mr. Taylor's face instantly turned pale, and he pointed at him, shouting, You ungrateful wretch. Leo Wright wanted to argue, but I interrupted him. Don't waste time. I am now a major shareholder of Golden Harvest Ventures. Taylor Group owes Golden Harvest the final payments for 2 projects. It's time to settle. We have no money, Mr. Taylor shouted. Then settle with assets. I raised my hand and threw out a list, a row of shops in East City, plus that Seaview Villa under your name. He slammed the table. You're being too much. I sneered coldly. Only now do you feel bullied? What about when I was a live-in son-in-law at your place back then? You called me a loser, and I endured it. You treated me like your secretary and bossed me around, and I endured that too. I endured for 3 years, just so that today I could mercilessly hold your whole family accountable. In the conference room, Mr. Taylor glared at me angrily, his hand trembling. I stood up and leaned close to his ear. Chairman Taylor, welcome to bankruptcy. Within a few hours of the news spreading, the California financial circle was abuzz. Taylor Group is about to collapse. Leo Wright has fled, and Sophia Taylor is completely finished. And Sophia Taylor finally couldn't sit still anymore. At 7 in the evening, she came to the company to see me in person. Claire Zhang stopped her at the door, but she forced her way in. I want to see Ethan, just for a moment. I was signing documents in the conference room, heard the noise, but didn't look up, only said, not seeing anyone. She rushed in, her knees buckled, and she knelt down in front of everyone. I beg you, please spare my dad. He just wants to save the company. He never meant to hurt you. I closed the pen cap and looked at her slowly. You're so good at kneeling. Why didn't you kneel in front of me back then and beg me not to sign? Tears rolled down her cheeks in big drops. I thought you weren't really going to leave. I thought you were just angry. You thought? I sneered. You thought pretending to have amnesia would make me spin around you like a dog. You thought I wouldn't dare to turn hostile. You thought you could control me. I walked up to her, looking down at the woman I once cared for so dearly, now kneeling on the floor in a pitiful state. Miss Taylor, please take your place now. My voice was low. Your appearance today perfectly suits the play you wrote. Her eyes were red, and she choked out, I know I was wrong. Ethan, I really know I was wrong. I am sorry. My tone softened a bit. Her eyes flickered slightly, thinking I was going to forgive her. I looked down at her and smiled. Unfortunately, I don't remember who you are. She suddenly froze, as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over her head. Are you serious? I slowly turned around, my back cold and hard as a knife. More real than you're pretending to have amnesia. 3 days later, Mr. Taylor announced that Taylor Group was officially bankrupt and undergoing restructuring, and Leo Wright had already fled with the money. Claire Zhang reported. He was arrested in Malaysia, stopped as soon as he landed. I nodded, saying lightly, send him to the financial crime unit. I want him to explain every single transfer clearly. She looked at me. You've really changed completely now. I said nothing, just looked out at the lights outside the window. Sophia Taylor, those days, came to wait for me at the company entrance every day, from shamelessly begging to see me at first to later collapsing on the ground, utterly without dignity. Claire Zhang asked, You really aren't moved at all? I only said 6 words. Too late to wake up? No. One late night, I was alone in the office looking over the accounts. Under the lights, I suddenly remembered that winter. She was wearing a sweater, leaning at the kitchen door, smiling and asking me, In this life, what do you want most? At that time, I said, For you to willingly look back. Now I understand. The day she looked back is no longer worth waiting for. I no longer need her, nor do I want her. When I walked out of the company door, I saw her curled up on the bench asleep, covered with the trench coat she had taken off. I stood there for a few seconds, and in the end, I still turned around and left, leaving her alone, waiting in the wind for someone who won't look back. That night, she knocked on my office door, crying, her eyes red, standing in front of me, unable to say a word. I stared at her and quietly asked, Is there anything else? She was silent for 3 seconds, then suddenly rushed forward, wrapping her arms around me, burying her face in my chest. I was wrong, Ethan. I was really wrong. I didn't push her away. I didn't respond either. I know. I was being clever. I thought you would be like before, always yielding to me, waiting for me to come back. But I was wrong. She choked up like a child losing control. I beg you, give me one more chance, please. I gently lifted her hand, took it away from me, then lowered my head and looked seriously into her eyes. Do you know where you went wrong? She nodded desperately. I shouldn't have lied to you. Shouldn't have pretended to have amnesia. Shouldn't have left you. No. My tone was extremely cold. Your mistake was treating me like a fool with no temper, thinking I would let you play me for life. She was stunned, her face slowly turning pale. I continued. You never truly cherished me. It's not that you wanted to come back after regaining your memory. It's that you realized I am valuable only after you lost everything. No. She panicked, her eyes filled with fear. I was just too proud before. I didn't know you could be so ruthless. Weren't you the one who said you didn't remember me before? I interrupted her. Then why are you crying? The color drained from her face, her voice trembling. Your heart is too cruel. I smiled. If I weren't cruel, whose arms would you be in right now? Her eyes collapsed, her body went limp, and she slumped directly to the ground. So we really don't have any chance at all. I bent down, my gaze cold. Sophia Taylor, you've stabbed me with a knife for 3 years, and now you're asking if there's a chance to hold your hand again? She cried completely, crying like a child. I stood up and took an old photo out of my suit pocket. That was the only travel photo we ever took together. She was holding my arm, smiling so genuinely. I threw that photo into the shredder. The photo was torn into pieces, her face, bit by bit, shredded. I said calmly, I don't even remember what you used to love to eat, wear, or fear anymore. She was stunned. I turned and walked toward the door. She shouted at me hoarsely, Ethan Johnson, did you ever really love me? I stopped in my tracks. Turning my back to her, I slowly uttered a sentence. I pretended to love you, acted for 3 years. You believed it was real. She lunged at me, grabbing my calf. Then why aren't you willing to act once more now? I kick her away, because the audience was already tired of it. Early the next morning, the news headlines exploded again. Breaking news, Taylor Group officially files for bankruptcy liquidation. Chairman under investigation for financial fraud. Update, Prosperity Investments completes asset merger of Taylor Group. Ethan Johnson officially takes over the 3 major subsidiaries. The business world is cold-blooded but highly efficient. I sat by the office floor-to-ceiling window, watching news flashes pop up one after another in the financial circle, just like the lies she once told me, torn apart and trampled on one by one. Claire Zhang came in and softly reminded, she's here again. I didn't even raise my eyebrows. Don't see her. She knelt downstairs, standing her ground without leaving. I finally put down my pen and glanced at her. If she wants to act until she dies, then let her act. Don't stop her. Claire Zhang nodded. I understand. 2 hours later, I saw Sophia Taylor at the entrance of the building. She was wearing the gray coat I once bought her hair messy, her face pale, and her eyes swollen and red as if she had just been slapped. You finally came out. Her voice was weak, but she tried to stand up straight. I said nothing. She slowly walked up to me and took out a letter. This is what I wrote to you. If you want to listen, listen. If not, I'll leave now. She looked up and gave me a deep look. You are the first person in this world to treat me like a human being, like a wife. In those years before, I called you tacky, said you had no taste, said you were low class. But now, I realize I can't even compare to one of your fingers. She smiled, a smile more painful than crying. You really won, Ethan Johnson. You won to the point that I feel like I'm not even a person. I stared at her and said calmly, what you said today is a little better than the dramas you used to act out. Tears welled up in her eyes. I really want to start over. I leaned close to her ear and whispered, if you're turning back now, it's not because I've changed for the better. It's because you can't go on like this. She froze, her lips trembling. I straightened up and adjusted my suit jacket. So don't say it's love. To be honest, you're just unwilling to let go of the way I am now. She completely collapsed to the ground, as if she had lost her soul. As for me, I left without looking back. This farce is finally about to end. In the end, she still begged me, and I gave her the hardest slap. One slap to wake her up from 3 years of arrogance, self-righteousness, and fake amnesia. She fell from a high position, tumbled down from the pedestal. I am no longer soft-hearted, nor do I linger. Whether she loves me or not, it no longer matters. Because I only remember, I no longer love her. On the day Taylor Group went bankrupt, the California business world fell into a rare moment of silence. Those who once eagerly flattered the Taylor family all went silent overnight, ignoring calls, not reading WeChat messages, and stingy even with a single greeting. As for Leo Wright, at the moment he was extradited back to the country, news cameras flashed nonstop at him. His legal team was busy with public relations, and I only said one sentence. If his mouth isn't honest, then let him never speak again for the rest of his life. Among the assets listed for auction in the Taylor family, one note sparked heated discussion. It was the lakeside villa that Mr. Taylor once had under Sophia Taylor's name, but in the column for the property transfer, it was glaringly Ethan Johnson. Claire Zhang handed me the list. This is the so-called betrothal gift property her father gave the year you two got married. Officially, it was given to you at the time. Now the legal department is asking if you want to sell it. I didn't look at the list and simply replied, give it to the welfare center, make it a nursing home. Claire Zhang was stunned. You're not keeping it? This spot is pretty good. I'm not keeping it to live in memories. I signed another document. That building is too dirty. 3 days later, Claire Zhang suddenly pushed open the office door. Her expression slightly different. She's in trouble. The pen in my hand froze. Who? Sophia Taylor. I said nothing. She whispered she took sleeping pills late last night, was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment, and is now out of danger. I silently looked out the window. Claire Zhang tentatively asked, are you going to go see her? I shook my head. She doesn't really want to die, I said coldly. She just wants me to show up. Claire Zhang looked at me for a long time, but ultimately said nothing. That night outside the hospital, reporters were lying in wait. I had just attended a closed-door investment meeting at a private club. As I walked to the parking lot, Marcus Lynn suddenly called. Do you really not care about her at all? I leaned against the car door and took a drag of my cigarette. Why should I care about her? She really broke down this time. That was her choice. I stubbed out the cigarette. She wanted to use a suicide to get even a tiny emotional reaction from me. She still overestimates herself. Didn't you risk your life for her back then? That was back then. I said flatly. She killed that version of me, so she can't expect to live in a dream herself. The next morning, I stood in the VIP lounge of the terminal, holding my boarding pass. Going to Europe to wrap up the final merger. Claire Zhang hesitated for a moment when she delivered the last document and said, she might be discharged today. She might still come looking for you. Can't find it. I put the boarding pass into my pocket. I had everyone at the company block my whereabouts. Claire Zhang nodded. You really don't plan to turn back? A cold smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. This play has been going on for 3 years. It's time for it to end. 5 minutes before boarding, I saw the last moment's post she sent. Only one sentence. I acted for 3 years, and he gave me one last look. There is no accompanying image below, nor any location tag. I did not like it, nor did I comment. Just stood up, turned off the phone, and stepped into the boarding gate. The moment the plane took off, I closed my eyes, my mind blank. The scenes from the past 3 years played like a rewound film, slowly being pulled back from my mind. Her smile as she walked in, wearing a wedding dress. Her indifference when she said amnesia. Her breakdown kneeling at my feet. I remember every scene clearly. But I no longer waver, no longer hurt, no longer resent. The day I landed in Paris, the morning sunlight streamed through the glass into the skyscraper. I stood on the investment conference terrace, holding a cup of black coffee, with the bustling city skyline before my eyes. Someone laughed and greeted me from behind. Mr. Ethan, long time no see. You've been quite the sensation lately. I smiled in response. They respected me because I no longer bowed to anyone. This world only remembers the winners. It doesn't care how miserable you once were. 3 days later, I saw a piece of news on social media. Sophia Taylor, daughter of the former director of Taylor Group, is suspected to have left California and is currently missing. I glanced at it and swiped away. Never opened it again. Her world completely collapsed. My world finally became quiet. I once loved her to the point of humility. I once hated her to the point of heartbreak. But now, I neither love nor hate. I only remember myself. Only remember the Ethan Johnson who finally no longer bows to anyone. This is the ending. For her, it is the final elegy. For me, it is a new beginning.